Hi, and here we have the second and final instalment of our video on the historic churches of Romney Marsh. The journey will take us through a corner of the county of Kent, although we'll start this leg in East Sussex. This is a circular route of under 50 miles or 80k, and this segment is under 25 miles or 40 kilometres. We've covered 7 churches in part 1 and the final 7 in this part. If you missed part 1 and you want to catch it now, I'll pop a link up in the corner. So let's get started. And we're leaving St Mary in East Guildford in the county of East Sussex. We're just over a mile away from the wonderfully quaint town of Rye. Why do I mention that? Well, if you want to break this journey into 2 parts, then why not consider Rye as your hub? There'll be our video of the town at the end. And we would also recommend you check out the historic Mermaid Inn, a place we love, old English charm with a touch of modernity. There's EV charging points in its car park for guests. How cool is that? Anyway, if you caught our last video, you may notice I repeat some points, and I can only apologise, but I want to make sure you have as much information as you can. We're heading east to the unique and iconic St Thomas Becket Church in Fairfield, and we'll be back in Kent. We're just crossing the railway line that runs to Rye, so once again you could use the town as your base and cycle this route, with Western Hanger close to junction 11 of the M20 as your destination. You'll need to get a train to Ashford and change to return to Rye. Anyway, to Fairfield. I think it's fair to call it a hamlet. The roads get a little narrow now. And just a little word of warning, the Romney Marshes are riddled with drainage channels called sewers, from the Middle English, a derivation of a Northern French word, and used long before it meant to flush our waste away. It's one of those facts I picked up from one of my favourite little reads, Kent Strangest Tales. It's in the chapter entitled The River That Left Kent Overnight, and explains a little more of the unique nature of this corner of the world. There will be an amazon.co.uk link in the description below with more details, along with all links I mentioned and a bunch more information, including the Google My Maps route for you to download too. I'll also include the postcode for each location, as well as the what 3 words identifier for the church or the best parking position. Now, as the Thomas Becket Church comes into view, we're going to head to vowed.smiling.dragon. That's the what 3 words location for the lay-by next to the entrance gate. The church is normally open for services but locked at other times. If you wish to visit inside, then you can collect the keys with the details on the notice board just inside the entrance gate. We didn't and decided just to take a look around this iconic location, said to be one of the most photographed in Kent. The church takes its name from Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury, murdered in 1170 in Canterbury Cathedral, and it dates back to the 12th century. It's said to be on the spot where Thomas Becket prayed for a miracle after becoming lost on the marshes. Originally built entirely of wood, the brick walls were added in the 18th century. In 1912 the church was in danger of collapse, so the whole church was deconstructed, the foundations made safe, and the church rebuilt using the original materials. It's time to head to our next church, and we need to turn around and head back along the road we came along, so bear with me. If St Thomas Becket's church looks familiar, it has featured on TV and film, notably in 2 versions of Charles Dickens' Great Expectations and also Parade's End. There we go, one last look. You may or may not know that the countryside is awash with public rights of way, and the best way to discover them is via the Ordnance survey maps. This gives you a level of detail not available on online maps, that is unless you have the OS Maps app. The premium version gives you the OS Explorer and Land Ranger maps, allows you to plot your route with distances and points of interest like pubs. I'm just saying. And it also has a pretty cool augmented reality feature which overlays markers for points of interest on your phone against the landscape you see before you. I think I have the idea for another video. Anyway, if you want to find out more, then check out the link in the description below. I really don't need to tell you this, but do keep an eye on your speed because you never know what's going to be around the next corner. It could be a horse, a cyclist, or just people enjoying the countryside. So we are going to join the A259, one of the larger roads running across Romney Marshes, and one that just bypasses our next destination, the village of Brookland. Joining these roads with their 60-mile-an-hour speed limit after the quiet country lanes can be a rude awakening. But we've only got a short hop before we arrive at our next destination, the Church of St Augustine, Brookland. And there she is. And your eyes don't deceive you. There's something a little different about this church. That's right, the bell tower is separate from the main church, and the reason for that was concerns over the weight of the structure on the marshy land. The tower was originally square, but changed to octagonal and timber-clad in 1450. There are 6 bells in the tower, and one of them is from 1450. St Augustine's, named after the first Archbishop of Canterbury, was originally built in around 1250, in place of a 12th century open frame structure, and that lead font you can see to the left is from around 1200. You'll notice the box pews we saw in the earlier churches on the marsh. Many were replaced in Victorian times, but not here. And then there's the fascinating mechanism that operates the clock on the church you may have noticed as we entered. In fact, the church is full of historic surprises, including one discovered in 1964. On the east end of the south wall of the South Chapel is the surviving part of a painting depicting the martyrdom of St Thomas Becket in 1170. It is thought to have been painted in the second half of the 13th century. Time to step outside for one last look before we hit the road again. And that leads me to Brookland Road, a poem by Rudyard Kipling, where he mentioned the bells of St Augustine's as well as Fairfield. Let's have a look at Brookland as we make our way to the next church. Okay, it's now time to rejoin the A259 as we head to Snargate. It's a relatively short hop, just under 3 miles. I'll repeat how we got to our list of 14 churches. Well, we lifted them directly from the Romney Marsh Historic Churches Trust. Founded in 1982, they identified this list of historically significant churches with the aim to preserve them and the land they sit on. You can find more information on their projects and works undertaken on their site by following the link in the description below. And now coming into view is St Dunstan's Church, Snargate. And if you're looking to be watered, I can highly recommend the Red Lion on our left. You just need to sort out your designated driver. But for now we need somewhere to park, and I think we'll have rags.replying.diary. There we go. This pretty little church was built around 1200 from Kentish ragstone and local flint, and this is often the case, added to over the centuries. However, it was restored in 1871, which is said to have removed or changed some key features. Those pesky Victorians. Once again, a 20th century restoration uncovered this mural from the 1500s of a ship dating from that period. Rumour has it these paintings were a sign that this was a safe place in which to hide smuggled goods. Remember, smuggling was rife in these parts. In fact, it was said in 1743 there was a seizure of tobacco found in the belfry, and a cask of Dutch gin was found under the vestry table. Can you not trust anyone? Time for our next destination. And sadly, no time for the Red Lion for me. We're heading to St Eanswith in the village of Brenzett. Once again we're doubling back on ourselves, but it's just a mile and a half. So again, I hope you like what we've put together here. If you have, then give us a like, it really helps us and we would appreciate it. And why not subscribe? I promise I won't change my style, it's just the locations that will vary. Oh, now time for a confession. I may edit this to look like it was hassle-free getting to St Eanswith Church, but it wasn't. The signposting wasn't great. It also didn't help that Church Lane didn't lead to the church. So I'm going to give you weekend.grouping.sundial and hope you try What 3 Words if you're not already using it. You need to trust me on this, but I'll get you there. The What 3 Words app can send the location to Apple Maps, Google Maps or Waze. St Eanswith stands on the site of an earlier 7th century Saxon church, although what you see before you is 12th century, with 13th and 14th century additions. St Eanswith was a 7th century Anglo-Saxon princess from nearby Folkestone who founded a Benedictine priory, one of the first Christian monastic communities for women in Britain. The inside is rather plain and again shows the signs of a Victorian restoration, and I'm not sure I'd like the job of checking the belfry. Of the many historical items in the church, the one thing that stands out is the tomb of the father and son combination of John Fagg of Rye in East Sussex. This was dedicated to them by the youngest son, Sir John Fagg. This tomb is said to have inspired the Edith Nesbit short story Man Size in Marble, part of her Grimm Tales. The Faggs have links with William Penn, who founded the colonial province of Pennsylvania in 1681, and there's a district of Faggs Manor in the state. So much history in one small church. We're back on the road again and heading to our next church of St Augustine's in Snave. Only a short hop of about 1.5 miles, but a chance for me to mention another book on my bookshelf. That is, I Never Knew That About Coastal England by Christopher Wynne. Now I know we haven't seen much of the coast on this trip, but we are very much in coastal country, and once the shoreline was much closer than it is today. I have to be honest, I'm a fan of Christopher's books, including I Never Knew That About London. I suppose I should have picked up I Never Knew That About England's Country Churches. Actually, I've just added that to my next Amazon order. Right, we're nearly there. Another church hidden away. Actually, it's not an active church anymore, being declared redundant in 1983. It is now entirely maintained by the Romney Marsh Historic Churches Trust. Once again, another impressive church built in the 13th century but added to in the 14th and 15th century with some restoration work in 1873. The church should have been open, but for our visit it wasn't, so we just have to look around and you can see the buttresses that were added to secure the building constructed on marshland. And now a penultimate church of St George's in Ivychurch. Again close by, under 2 miles across Romney Marsh. You'll find St George's next to the Bell Inn, and again we have legends of smugglers, with rumours of a tunnel between the pub and the church, with stories that services could not be held due to contraband in the church. Now that's going some. The church was built under the patronage of the Archbishops of Canterbury, so it's grander than it needs to be for the size of parish. Built in the 13th century with later additions in the 14th and 15th, with a Victorian restoration between 1888 and 90. Does this all sound familiar? Let's step inside and take a look around. The box pews were removed in that Victorian restoration, and now you have a much smaller area by the altar for today's congregation. Also within the church are two permanent exhibitions, the Ivychurch local history display and the Museum of Rural Life. We are now heading to our final church, St Peter and St Paul's in Newchurch. A journey of just under 4 miles, or 5.5 miles if you don't listen to the sat-nav properly. At least it's a scenic route. And I'll leave you in peace for a moment or two until we get to Newchurch. Okay, we've arrived at Newchurch, or have we? Okay, so we've definitely arrived now. Now we must be here. I think I can see the church tower to our right. And time to find a parking space. Acclaimed.inversion.codes. There we go. Those what 3 words again? This tiny village is mentioned in the Domesday Book of 1086, and there may have been a Saxon church on the site before the current early 13th century church. The tower was added in stages in the 15th century, but started to lean, so buttresses were added and the top layer created true. This gives the tower a bent appearance if viewed from the south. Inside, once again, you are greeted with a wonderful wooden vaulted ceiling. And then there's the fine Jacobean pulpit, the oldest on the marsh, dating from the early 17th century. But I told you that when I said it was Jacobean. Again, you'll be impressed by the size. Given the location, it shows how life on the marsh has changed over the centuries. And to help explain that history, one corner of the church is turned over with another fine local exhibition. And now to step outside and take one final look at St Peter and St Paul's, and also Newchurch, which turns out to be rather pretty. If you're heading on to junction 11 of the M20, the start of this route, then we have 8.5 miles to travel. Or if you're returning to Rye, then we have 13.5 miles, and you're going the wrong way. I think this is the appropriate time to say our goodbyes, and if you've made it this far, well done. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, stay safe, and happy travels.